In addition to the direct funding for all counties, the American Rescue Plan includes target investments for expanding access to broadband. As we work to increase broadband access for our residents, we're working closely with the Federal Communications Commission. We are pleased today to welcome the acting chairwoman of the FCC, Jessica Rosenworcel. Chairwoman Rosenworcel has over 2 decades of communication policy experience. Prior to joining the FCC, she served as Senior Communications Counsel for the United States Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. Before entering public service, she practiced communications law in Washington, D.C. Please join me in welcoming our FCC acting chairwoman, Jessica Rosenworcel.
Thank you to the National Association of Counties for having me here today. When I was given the opportunity to join you, I took a look at your conference schedule, and I have to say, no one will say you thought small. It's not just that you have the president on your agenda, you have more than 2 full weeks of conference programming. It's a reminder that when it comes to the big issues of the day, there's a lot going on, and county officials are on the front lines. It's all before you. And case in point, in the past year, you had to become pretty much an expert on public health and epidemiology virtually overnight. And today, as evidenced by the fact that we're meeting online, this pandemic is really a part of every discussion at this year's conference. You know, I can relate because it is also informing everything we do at the FCC. On January 21st, I was designated as acting chairwoman by President Biden. It's a privilege and it's a responsibility because I know in this role, the FCC has real work to do to expand the reach of communications so that the benefits of the digital age reach everyone, everywhere. It turns out Congress agrees because in the COVID relief package it approved at the end of last year, as well as the American Rescue Plan it approved just a few weeks ago, it laid out a series of big tasks for the FCC. And executing on these directives immediately became the agency's most urgent priority. So I want to talk to you today about what the FCC is doing to implement these new laws and how the success of our efforts is going to depend on local leaders like yourselves. You know, as a nation, we are gradually working our way out of this pandemic, which has upended life all across the country. We've masked up and hunkered down, and in the process, we have moved so much of day-to-day life online. For many of us, work, school, healthcare, and more are delivered virtually. That means broadband is no longer just nice to have, it's need to have for everyone, everywhere. To help make that happen, Congress directed the FCC to establish something new. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit. This is historic. It's the nation's largest ever program to help households nationwide afford broadband service. With so many people in so many places struggling during this pandemic and ongoing economic crisis, this is the right time for the program of this magnitude. In total, Congress provided $3.2 billion for this effort. And here's how it works. This program will provide low-income households discounts of up to $50 a month for internet service, and that number goes up to $75 a month for tribal lands. On top of that, eligible consumers will also have the opportunity to receive a discount of up to $100 on a computer or a tablet. So how big of a deal is this program? Well, according to the Pew Research Center, 1/3 of broadband users report they fear not being able to continue to afford service during this pandemic. 1 in 3 Americans. That's tens of millions of people. They're in rural America, urban America, and everything in between. It's a reminder that the digital divide in this country is not just an infrastructure challenge, it's also an affordability challenge, made even more challenging by this pandemic. Because when broadband service is cut off, access to jobs, education, and even signing up for vaccines is put in jeopardy. So we're working feverishly to get the emergency broadband benefit up and running. so it's open to eligible households as soon as possible. Now, how do we plan to do that? First, we're encouraging broadband providers of every stripe to help by participating in the program and offering service to eligible households. Providers right now are formally filing applications to tell us they intend to participate. And so far, get this, more than 380 nationwide have signed up. This is really good news. And we want to process these applications quickly so we can get as many qualified providers across the country involved as possible. Second, we're building an IT system for this program that's ready to go and complies with the law. Third, and pay special attention here, we're seeking the assistance of local organizations, schools, faith-based institutions, and any others who are trusted voices in their communities to help get the word out and encourage those in need to enroll. To make it easy for those who are interested in helping, we even set up a website that includes a place for outreach partners to learn how they can get the word out. And you can check it out at fcc.gov/broadband benefit. Now, this isn't the only area where we're going to need your expertise and help. In addition to charging the agency with setting up this emergency broadband benefit, Congress also directed the FCC to get going on a project to map where broadband is and is not all across the country. Now, it's no secret that the FCC's existing broadband maps leave a lot to be desired. In the before times, when I would travel around the country, I would hear one constant refrain from people in places where broadband infrastructure was scarce. When service wasn't available in their area, they would do a little research to understand why it didn't reach their town, their home, or their business. And at some point, they would find the broadband maps we have in Washington, and they'd look them up to see what it says about where they live and work. And lots of times, those maps wouldn't be right. It would say there's service in communities where there is none. It would say there's a signal in places where bars are hard to come by. And it would leave folks stumped. They all had the same question. They wanted to know why these maps just didn't reflect what they saw on the ground. So the reason why is a little wonkish, but I think you all might be up for it. So let me explain the methodology used by the FCC to date, because it says a lot about what these maps get wrong and what they can get right. Right now, if a single household in a census block has broadband service, the FCC's maps assume that every household in that census block also has broadband service. Think about it. That means our official data could very easily and systematically overstate where service is present, because this methodology means a whole lot of homes with no broadband access can show up as served in Washington. Now, this kind of data gathering may have worked well enough for the FCC in the past, but I don't think it comes close enough to being good enough for right now. Like I said at the start, this pandemic has demonstrated that broadband is no longer nice to have. It's an essential service that every household and every business needs to have a fair shot at 21st century success. So when it comes to the FCC's broadband maps, I believe we can do better, and we will. Even better, we now have the support of Congress to do so. Last year brought us legislation known as the Broadband Data Act, which direct the FCC to clean up its maps. And we also got new funding to make it happen. So this is great news. So how are we going to do it? Well, first, getting our broadband maps right will require better data from existing carriers. So we're going to start by asking them to file more granular data about exactly where they provide service. But we aren't going to stop there. That's because the best broadband map is not going to be built in Washington. It's going to be built by you, people across the country, because your input on this effort is critical. And built into the law and our rules is a way for local government authorities to provide us with facts about where service truly is and is not. In fact, we can put into place a process with a presumption in favor of the data you file and a requirement that providers respond to your data. That means you play an important role in getting these maps right. And by the way, so do consumers. In fact, just this week, for the first time ever, the FCC set up a portal to have consumers share where they are and are not getting broadband service at home. Now, the single best time to start a mapping effort like this, well, it was probably years ago, but the next best time is right now. So right after I took the reins at the agency, we got a big effort underway. We set up a broadband data task force, and I want you to be on notice. We're going to follow up because we know no one understands what is happening in their community like local officials. And getting these maps correct is essential for all our policymaking in the future. Because without good data, we won't be able to reach everyone everywhere in this country with high-speed service. And I think that's what we need to do. Call it the 100% policy, because I think we need to reach no less than 100% of us. And if you think that's audacious, let me remind you that we've done big things before. It was a century ago, we found a way to light up the country and bring electricity everywhere. It's a healthy reminder that we can and should do big things with broadband to make sure it reaches everyone, and we should. But we won't do it alone in Washington. Again, we're going to need your help. And these are big tasks Congress has sent our way. But let me close with one more big task. And to tell you about it, I wanted to start by describing an image. At the start of this school year, a picture of two young girls lingering outside a Taco Bell swept across the internet. They were not headed to the restaurant for lunch. Instead, they sat cross-legged on the ground with laptops perched on their knees, just trying to catch a free Wi-Fi signal to do their schoolwork. They had nowhere else to go to get online and go to class. Now, viral images can sting, and this one was no exception because it was heart-wrenching to see what these students in Salinas, California had to do to keep up in school. But you know, they're hardly unique. There are kids like them in communities across the country. They're sitting in parked cars and strip malls just to pick up Wi-Fi that's free to go online. They're lingering outside of school even after the final bell is rung because it's the only place they can get the connection they need to do their assignments. And these are the same students have been locked out of the virtual classroom when schools across this country shut down. This especially cruel part of the digital divide is known as the homework gap. It affects as many as 17 million students in this country, and I think it's time to fix it. So now for the good news. In legislation earlier this month, Congress finally gave us the tools to do it with a $7.1 billion emergency connectivity fund to help schools and libraries. And last week, the FCC issued a public notice seeking comment on how to implement this fund. In other words, we're taking public feedback and we need to hear from you, about how your communities have grappled with the homework gap and how these new funds can help. It's the start of something big, ending the homework gap so no child is left offline. So in closing, we're going to need to work with you as we navigate broadband and infrastructure challenges down the road. I know it hasn't always been easy in the past, but I want to make it better in the future. Because one of the most valuable lessons I've learned from my time in Washington is that so many of the best solutions to our nation's biggest challenges, they don't come from the Capitol. They rise up from the local level. So if we're both committed and both working together, I think we can go further than ever before. I'm counting on it. And in fact, I'm looking forward to it too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Rosenworcel. I just came from a press conference where here in Boone County, Kentucky, we are announcing a major partnership with Cincinnati Bell, and it's a fiber to the door program. And what you just said is exactly what we are challenged with and experiencing here in Boone County. And I know our counties across America can relate to your comments today. And it's refreshing to hear that you all realize some of these challenges that we're facing and that you're addressing them. So thanks again. We appreciate you being with us today.